This is the brand new 2023 Toyota Prius, which comes with fantastic new styling and an energetic personality. Now, this brand new image for the Toyota Prius is a result of declining sales from its best years in 2012 and 2013, and the hybrid has failed to break the six-figure sales mark since 2017. When the Prius first came on sale, it was praised and bought by early adopters and even celebrities. And of course, it was also featured as a world-dominating car bought by those who wanted to save the trees. Since then, it has declined in popularity with the advent of a highly competitive hybrid vehicle marketplace and even the introduction of mass production electric vehicles, or EVs. So today in this video, we will be going over everything that's new on this brand new 2023 Toyota Prius. Prius starts at $27,450 for the base model, and the car we have with us today is actually a Toyota Prius Limited with the premium package, which as tested comes to $36,399. Now at that price, you get a vehicle that is purely hyper-focused on fuel economy, but features more options than you would find in some of Toyota's other hybrid models like the Corolla LE Hybrid, which is all important things to consider when you're buying your next car. So today we'll be going through the exterior, the interior, the powertrain, and then of course we'll take it for a drive. But before we get too deep, first a quick word from our sponsor.
Life is too short to drive boring cars!
So the new styling for the Toyota Prius looks absolutely gorgeous. Per Toyota, the design was inspired by performance coupes, which can be seen with the low-slung hood, a traditional flat Prius windshield, which adds to the sportiness, and the wide rear fender flares, which to me look like they were taken directly from the Lexus LC500. It's also where we will find the first of 15 Easter eggs that Toyota has hidden throughout the Prius, which is part of that new energetic personality that they've decided to pump in and improve sales. Another interesting aspect of the exterior is the low-key nature of the Toyota badges. The Prius badges seem to have more of a presence, to appear almost as if its own brand, so when you pull up behind one in traffic, you read Prius in big letters on the back. In the front, it still feels like a Prius with our bi-LED headlights and our cool swoosh-like LED daytime running lights. Our car is finished in cutting edge, which is a fantastic light metallic silver that is accented by our larger 19-inch alloy wheels included with the limited trim. On the windshield, just below the center sensors and the rear view mirror mount, you can find a small Prius outline as the first of our Easter eggs. The letters Prius can be found in the rear hatch. The letters Prius can be found in the rear wheel arch, spelled vertically if you look closely. And lastly, Prius is spelled out again in the rear window, blending in with the defrost lines. On the back, we have our final badging, including LTD, to let people know that this is in fact the limited trim, along with the limited specific powered opening and closed lift back hatch, which features another hybrid reborn Easter egg inside. The interior is small, but makes good use of the space to fit 4 adults, as long as they aren't professional basketball players, and features a lot of good Toyota and Prius traits like an abundance of physical buttons. The interior materials are cheap, composed of a mix of plastic and Softex, which is Toyota's spill-resistant faux leather material that can be found on the steering wheel and perforated seats. The materials chosen for the interior are often picked for price and lightweight, which leads to better fuel economy, so you won't find much sound deadening inside either, which becomes apparent on the highway. That being said, the interior does look modern thanks to an abundance of screens, LED interior running lights throughout the dash, and some more textures. The 7-inch multi-information display serves as your dash, which feels closer to an EV than a gas car due to the minimal information provided, digital speed readout, gas tank, and how hard you push on the gas, but you can add some additional information along with map readouts per your preference. The mounting of the 7-inch dash screen can make adjusting the wheel a little strange to avoid blocking it with the steering wheel as you read the display over the wheel as opposed to reading it through the wheel like most cars. The center 12-inch multimedia touchscreen is a big improvement over the smaller 8-inch and is simple in function but responsive, as a lot of the controls are actually managed by buttons, but it does feature Android Auto and Apple CarPlay, which is always important and should be standard in modern cars. The seats are comfortable. They feel better than some of the previous generation Priuses and offer lumbar support and power adjustment with memory settings, including moving the seat out of the way for easy entry and exit, a feature usually reserved for Lexus. But you can also find more space in the interior by manually pulling back the sunshade should you feel the need to do so. The back seats have less headroom than the front, but at 6 foot even, I can sit in the back without my head touching the roof, and you can even open the glass roof if you wanted to expand the space and make it feel more open. There are more Easter eggs inside the interior phrased as hashtags, with the first being hashtag wireless charger, which is visible when looking directly in, followed by hashtag glove box, of course visible by dropping the glove box, hashtag console box, which is found underneath this sort of carpet that's hidden in the Limited, but the most fun is the tab in front of the shifter, which after pushing up a button to show it, you see hashtag hidden compartment, by far the funniest thing, giving the most personality in the new Prius. Power for the Prius comes from a hybrid 2-liter inline-4, which changes performance figures based on the drivetrain preference of front-wheel drive or all-wheel drive. The front-wheel drive model makes 194 horsepower and 139 pound-feet of torque and achieves 0 to 60 in 7.2 seconds, while the on-demand all-wheel drive model makes 196 horsepower with the same 139 pound-feet of torque and achieves 0 to 60 in 7 seconds flat. Whichever option you choose uses an eCVT transmission. Now, while it's not a race car, it is a considerable improvement over the previous generation Prius, knocking off 2 seconds in the 0 to 60 and a 70 horsepower increase, which should help all around, whether you're driving in the city or taking it up to the mountains. As for the fuel economy, which is of course the main reason anybody looks into purchasing a Prius, the EPA ratings are 52 miles per gallon city and 52 miles per gallon highway, but Toyota says you can get up to 57 miles per gallon, which is very impressive either way. With the 11.3 gallon tank in the Prius, that gives you an estimated range of 587.6 miles, which is awesome. Driving the car in normal mode here in Phoenix, the car averaged around 40 to 43 miles per gallon in mixed driving, with the ventilated seats and AC on full blast to survive the 110-degree days. It's important to point out that we do not have the lightest foot or best hybrid driving habits, but having the climate control on full blast also puts a heavy strain on the system as well. If you use the Eco Drive mode, you may notice that the car throttles the climate control back. It's best to say that your experience may vary, but the EPA ratings are certainly impressive, especially considering the horsepower increases. So, what's it like to drive the brand new Toyota Prius? So first of all, if you've ever driven a Toyota or Lexus hybrid product, it drives exactly like that. For those of you that haven't, essentially what you're expecting is you have this insanely highly boosted steering, which means the steering is really light. It's really easy to move back and forth. In a parking lot, you could even move it with one finger, which in the grand scheme of things for just ease of driving is really nice, but it means that you don't have this necessarily precise feedback from the wheel itself that can sometimes sort of feel to almost like a numb driving experience. But again, it's not really a sports car, so it's not really expected to have that dynamic of a driving experience, but it can be nice and easy to drive, so nothing to worry about as far as your forearms go. As far as the gas pedal and brake goes, the gas is fairly straightforward, but you do experience some rubber banding from that CVT automatic transmission, but that's nothing particular to the Prius. That's just a sort of standard trait that you'll find with the CVT transmission. On top of that, for the brakes, because this is regenerative braking, there's instances where the braking is sort of hard to manage. It can feel like you're either 10% or 90% of the brake pressure, and it's a little bit harder to manage, but that does save you extra fuel economy by bringing some of that energy out of the brakes, out of the wheels, and putting that back into your battery. So there's a good reason that it exists. It just means you might have a problem sometimes coming to a smooth stop with the car, but that's really not that big deal in the grand scheme of things. Now we're about to get on the freeway here in a sec, so we can demonstrate some of the other things that I've sort of mentioned in the car as well, that are just sort of common traits and things to be expected when it comes to the Prius, because the main goal of this car is of course focused on fuel economy, not so much the actual like luxury aspect, and it's not a sports car. So you can hear it as it picks up an audible tone there as we're getting up the freeway on-ramp. This one happens to be uphill bit, so the Prius is going to be struggling to produce that all 194 horsepower as we work our way up here. Now as we get up here, it's becoming a little bit louder, and so like I mentioned earlier, one of the things with this car is, one of the main focuses is weight saving. So this car comes in around 3,100 pounds, about 3,200 pounds with the all-wheel drive, and then that means they have to give up certain things for the sake of better fuel economy by having a lighter weight car, and one of those things is sound deadening. So you may notice a little bit more noise while driving on the freeway. It's actually not that bad, partially thanks to the fact that this is shaped like a teardrop, so it's very aerodynamic in terms of cutting through everything. But that's something to keep in mind when you're going to be driving your Prius, and it may be worth to you, the JBL audio upgrade that is in this particular car might be worth the extra money, just because that means you'll be able to cut out a little bit more of that noise, and you'll be able to listen to your music, podcasts, whatever your personal preference is, and it sounds a little bit better than just the generic wind noise and road noise that you'll hear while driving on the freeway. Now back to some of the other options. This does have some various driving modes. You can go to in Sport and Eco. We've kept it in normal for our time driving the car, just to get a more well-rounded experience, let's say, which Toyota generally recommends that you leave the car in normal, so nothing wrong with that there. But we still managed to get somewhere in the neighborhood of around 43 miles per gallon, which isn't bad, and obviously you can get a much better fuel economy rating than what we've managed. It just happens to be what your foot looks like if you're a lead foot, or if you're fairly light, live in a hilly area versus the not hilly area. So it's not a fast car by any means, but it has no problem keeping up with modern traffic. You certainly won't have any issues just driving it to and from work or using it as an appliance car, which is always good. As for visibility, everything is fantastic. This flat windshield actually aids a lot in overall visibility, and the seats are relatively comfortable, where you can take it on a longer road trip than you would with any other previous Prius. So with that, that's a quick look at what it's like to drive the Prius. Obviously, I can tell you our various impressions. It's very smooth. It is a modern car, lots of benefits with the independent front suspension, but ultimately you should go and test drive one of these at a dealer to make sure it fits you and your needs at your local dealership. So in conclusion, for some of the driving aspects of the Toyota Prius, there are some things to think about when it comes to driving this car. So the driving part isn't overly exciting or anything of that matter, but there are some cool aspects, and that's going to be the actual driving maintenance as well. As you drive, there are things like tires and brakes that are just going to naturally get used up while you're driving. Now, unfortunately for the Prius, it's got fairly skinny tires, and the brakes themselves are also very small. With the regenerative braking system that aids your fuel economy in this car, that means those parts are going to be fairly cheap, and for things like the brakes, you really shouldn't have to replace them that often at all, and even the tires are going to wear less because of how light this car is. So that means your cost for fuel is going to go down, because obviously this thing can get up to 57 miles per gallon, which makes it incredibly fuel efficient, even for a hybrid. And you also have cheap maintenance for things that are going to be regular driving replacements. So lots of things to consider when you're looking for a car, especially something like the Prius, which gets better gas mileage than the other Toyota hybrid options. Like the Corolla is something you might be cross-shopping, but happens to get more features as well, which is all things to consider, like the JBL sound system and even some of the ventilated and heated seats, which are more of an advantage here in the Prius. So all things to consider. But ultimately, I could talk to you all day about what I think about driving the Prius. Whether you like the overboosted steering or not is ultimately up to you. The fact of the matter is, you need to go to the dealership and test drive one for yourself to see if it's something you're interested in. The Toyota Prius is not a luxury car. It is a fuel-efficient commuter first and foremost. Toyota has added new styling along with a new personality, and even bumped up the horsepower numbers to try and shake up the Prius image, but it is still as fuel-efficient as it ever was before. Sure, there are cheaper hybrids even in the Toyota range, like the Corolla Hybrid, but they don't have as many features as the new Prius. On the other hand, there are luxury hybrid options that come with even more features, but usually end up sacrificing fuel economy. The fact of the matter is the Prius is one of the best in the game as a hyper-competitive hybrid space, and it's fantastic at saving fuel and saving money.